accuracy of Jesus being in both the line of Abraham and the line of David. You know, one proves his nationality through the family of Abraham, and the other proves his royalty through the family of David. So these genealogies were things that, you know, I didn't really realize this, but these old genealogies and stuff used to be kept by the local governments. When I started thinking about this, it made more sense to me that about how when Mary and Joseph and everybody, how they went back to Bethlehem, you know, so that they could account for themselves, that they had to, you know, register, because they kept track of everybody who was born in these cities and who left these cities, and, you know, and all of this stuff. And the reason that they kept this was for things just like this deal about Jesus, you know, is because if there was somebody like back during the time of the Levites, if somebody from one of the families of them, if somebody said, well, I'm from that family, that's where I am, they went right back to these books and they looked at it. And if they saw you wasn't there, you was trying to sneak in or climb over the fence, they kicked you out of the priesthood and you were just out, you know. So they were very serious about all this genealogy and who you came from and where you came from. Like if you came from a wrong town and you didn't want to be from that town and you told them you were from this town, well, they'd go through the register at that town, and if you wasn't from there, guess what? You're out, you know. They were dead on serious about all this stuff. So, you know, and this used to be a really, really big thing, and it appears that they used to keep all these records in the temple, okay? But when the temple was destroyed, they lost a lot of that stuff, okay? So, you know, it was kind of the proof. So this genealogy, as we're going to look at it in Matthew, the first little bit, is the proof of not only who Jesus was, but where Jesus came from, okay? So really just who he is, all right? So let's look at verse 1 in the book of Matthew. It says, the book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, if you think about it, that's kind of weird the way they state that, okay? Because we know that Abraham came a long time before David did. So why does David get the first declaration, all right? Well, this is a unique phrase. It's only to the book of Matthew. You know, even back through the Old Testament, this phrase, you know, it's not really there. You look in the Old Testament, like Malachi, Zechariah, Haggai, you know, even to the Pentateuch, you know, the books like Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus, Exodus, and Genesis. This phrase, it's not found anywhere else, you know, where it talks about Jesus being like this. You know, all of this genealogy, again, was to prove factually of who Jesus was and where Jesus came from, because the Old Testament prophecy, he had to be this person and he had to come from this place to be who he was, okay? So, you know, he was born by a family relation into who he was. He wasn't just somebody off the street, you know, he came actually from these families. It's like you. How did you get to be in the family of God? Huh? You were born into it, right? Reborn. So see, you were born into the family, and that's what they wanted to know. They wanted that you were born into the family. See, that's what it tells us in John chapter 3, verse 3. It says we must be born again, okay? So that birthright is a huge deal, especially back in these days. And it's a huge deal today, I mean, because your life can kind of hinge sometime on who you are and where you came from. Okay, so that puts us as new believers, we're in the Lamb's Book of Life, into Jesus' family. So, and one of the things is, in talking about the Book of Life, we're all in the book of Adam. See, that's where we all got our start, you know. He was the first. So we're all in the book of Adam, okay? And so I'm just praying that you are in that Lamb's Book of Life too. And if you're not, I'm just telling you, you need to be, okay? You got it? I can say it louder if you want me to. You know, Matthew said, Jesus Christ, the son of David, and then the son of Abraham. Well, like I said, Abraham came first. So, but here was the deal. they mentioned the family of David first to solidify Christ's royalty, okay? So they wanted to deem, the book of Matthew wanted to deem Christ's royalty first, okay? And then as the Messiah and as the King, he was wanting to touch, and we'll find that, I think, a lot in Matthew. I think there's lots of touch back to Old Testament prophecy, okay? And there's a lot of stuff that I think Matthew will mention that the other three Gospels don't hit on quite like he does, but they're all swapped back and forth like that too, okay? So, he's the Messiah. The one that they told was to establish the kingdom of heaven here on earth. So the royalty part was a real priority, for Jesus to be who he was. But not to diminish in any way that place of Abraham, because here's what God told Abraham. Look at Genesis 22, verse 18. In your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. So in his seed. And look at Galatians 3 and 16. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promise made. He does not say, and to seeds of as many, but as of one, and to your seed, who is Christ. Okay, so that deal tied him in with David's family and tied him with Abraham's family, proves that he is the person that is qualified to be that Messiah that the Old Testament prophets spoke of, okay? So this is just this genealogy is a real solidification. How y'all like that word? I spit that out all by myself. A real solidification to who Christ is, okay? All right, now we're gonna read verses 2 through 8, and then we're gonna kind of back up and go through there a little bit. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. Judah begot Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez begot Hezron, and Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab, and Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz and by Rahab, and Boaz begot Obed by Ruth, and Obed begot Jesse. And Jesse begot David the king, and David the king begot Salmon by her who had been the wife of Uriah. Solomon begot Rehoboam, and Rehoboam begot Abijah, and Abijah begot Asa. Asa begot Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begot Jeroam, and Jeroam begot Uzziah. Okay, so it's interesting if you look at this and if you find out anything about some of this old Hebrew stuff, okay, that because it really shines like neon if you're used to these genealogies and stuff, okay? It's just like in Numbers. I don't really think you'll hardly find anywhere in Numbers where it does this same thing, okay? And that's it mentions, verse 1 through 6, it mentions the names of 4 women. And not only is it 4 women they mention, but it's 4 Gentile women, okay, at that. And customarily, women's names don't show up in any Hebrew genealogies. And it's, it's the same thing today. They're talking about these begats. It's like you, bless your heart, you women, when y'all marry us so hard-headed men, y'all lose your name, right? And so the children that you have and the way they pass off and go through the men's name. The men's line goes on, and yours can, unless you got a brother, yours can stop at any moment. You know what I'm saying? And, and that's kind of the way all this was. Now, kind of weird about this, because in the law, God said his people were not to intermarry with tribes of pagans and heathens. Yet these guys are these Gentile women are in this genealogy of the Lord Jesus, the Messiah. Okay? Sounds kind of weird if you think about it. So remember, Abraham had to send back to get a bride of the right blood for Isaac. I hope y'all know that story because he did that. But then Isaac did the same thing for Jacob. He went and got Jacob a wife, okay? So the question being, where did these 4 Gentile women come to be in this picture? How did these 4 Gentile women get in the genealogy? 2 were Canaanites, 1 was a Moabite, and the 4th was a Hittite, okay? So let's look. The first one it mentions in here is Tamar. She's mentioned there in verse 3. And I don't have a whole lot of detail about her, but she got in there because she was a sinner, okay? She was a sinner, got turned around, got with God, evidently got with the right guy, and so she's in that lineage, okay? Way back in there, she's in that lineage. And then the second one that's mentioned is Rahab. Now, Rahab is not a real pretty picture about her. Her character wasn't too much either, in her story about, about Joshua and them in chapter 2 of Genesis, and searching out, when they went to search out the land, and she helped them, because when you read about Rahab was a harlot, when we first read about her, okay? But became a real lovely person after her knowledge and after her learning of God, okay? And that's in, in Hebrews 11:3. Let's look at Hebrews 11:3. By faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe when she had received the spies with peace. So Rahab found out about it, and she had faith. She took faith. She believed. So she goes from sinner to person of faith, okay? And then the next person we see mentioned in there is Ruth. Ruth's next up, okay? Ruth, I don't think you'll find no bad stuff about Ruth. She is just a lovely person, very helpful, a very caring and loving woman, and I don't think you'll find any wrong in her. But she was shut out because she was a Moabite or an Ammonite, or an Ammonite. And Deuteronomy 23:3 says that Moabite and Ammonite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. So she was an outsider. She wasn't in there. Now, y'all got to remember, this is way before the Apostle Paul. This is when Gentiles weren't welcome in the family, okay? They were out, okay? So, but then came this guy. Here comes this man named Boaz. Now, look, I don't know if y'all believe in love at first sight or anything like that, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's a biblical fact. If you don't believe it, you read about Ruth and Boaz, because he saw her one time and he went, wow, who is that chick? And, had to have her. So it was it's a lovely, lovely story, man, I'm going to tell you. So if you hadn't read it, read it. You're supposed to be reading your Bible anyway. So Boaz, it was love at first sight with Ruth, and even Ruth wondered, because she pretty much did everything but ask him. What she did, as a matter of fact, she says, why have I found grace in your eyes? Okay? But can't you and I ask the very same question of the Lord? Because if you look at these stories, these people were in the family of God, right? We got it right there in black and white and red. We were in the family of God, okay? How did they get in the family of God? 1, they married into it. 2, they were born into it. Because before they didn't believe, now they do have faith, now they do believe, all right? So they're in the family, all right, locked in. But we in the same way. They came to the family of God in progression. They were sinners, they got faith, they got salvation, and they were in, okay? Now, the other one, not mentioned by name, but mentioned because it says she was the wife of Uzziah. Is that right? Yeah. And so that's Bathsheba is who we were talking about Bathsheba, Now, so that's David's mama. So David's mentioned in there. Now, and you got to think about David. David was a sheep. He was one of the Lord's sheep, The Lord loved that guy. Thought he was the Bible says David was a man with the same heart as God, okay? But what did he do? He murdered a man, right? He murdered a man. So, so here's this story of God's great salvation in the midst of this genealogy, as these people who were sinners, who had bad, hard, horrid, horrible lives and everything. But then they came to this faith. They were faced with the Lord, with God. And they found faith in God. And by finding faith in God, they found this new family. I mean, isn't that the story of God, y'all? Isn't that God in himself? We find faith in God and we get this whole new family out of it, okay? Now, I know that some of y'all think, well, I don't really know if I want some of these people to be my family. And that's okay, because you have no choice. They are your family. It's kind of like the family you got, you know. I remember for a long time, I didn't want my brother or my sister, but they still were there. They never went away. So, you know, that's kind of the way we are. We'll make the best out of it. We'll all get along really good, okay? So, God's great salvation talks about all through this genealogy. This genealogy proves where Jesus comes from. It proves where he came from. It proves who he is. It proves his royalty, okay? So, this genealogy differs some from the other gospels. But here's the difference in these gospels and the way these genealogies made different, none of them is wrong. The thing is that they're going to talk about and they're going to use the genealogy to prove the points that they're coming across with in these stories, okay? So some of these people that are mentioned here may not be mentioned, you know, in the other genealogies, but they're going to have a point that they're trying to relate to. And, you know, some of it wasn't used. Just they're going to give you enough of this stuff to prove the point and stuff, you know, where they're at. So that's where we're starting off in the book of Matthew, okay? This first 8 or so verses in there. And, you know, it's just the main thing is to get out of this right here is to have that assurance and to be sure that this man that we're talking about, this is what Matthew's trying to relate to us right here, is to be absolutely sure that this Jesus came from the right place and he came through the right people, all right? One is to be that Israelite, to be where he's from, and the other is that he has the right and the privilege to be the royalty that he's called to be, okay? So I want to kind of hook up right there tonight, but I want that to be our main focus for tonight, that that's what Matthew's trying to kind of start us out on. And you know, we're not running a foot race in here, and so I think we're going to kind of take this in small enough bites that we can look at it and think about it and chew about it. Y'all want to read ahead in Matthew and kind of look at some of this stuff, do you your own Bible study on it or whatever. Look, I recommend you. But I'm going to tell you, there's 2 books in the Bible, and I think I've told y'all this before, that they say are the most important 2 books in the Bible. One of them is Matthew, and the other one is Genesis. So I really want to take our time, and I want to go through this because I did Matthew a long time ago, and I was a pretty fresh caught fish back in those days. And I want to go through it, and I want to kind of go through it slow. I want to get my, y'all know what a lice comb is? Like if you got lice in your hair, y'all know? Yeah, you know those little combs? I'm just saying that because that's the finest tooth comb I've ever seen. Huh? That dude has got some teeth in it. That's what I want to go through Matthew with. I want to use your lice comb. Yeah, it's just sick, but you know, that's the way I am. I can't help it sometimes. It just crosses my mind, comes out of my mouth, and I got no foot clutch. I don't know what to do, you know. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at. So there's kind of the start, that genealogy, and so that's good. So hey, everybody that's tuned in, appreciate y'all coming and watching on us, and if we can help you, y'all give us a call, and y'all come see us on Wednesday night. Come on and sit in with us and be part of this Bible study, because by hook or crook, we're going to learn something before this is over, okay?